Hello and welcome. We are here with ArtsFund. I am Aaron Blank, a new ArtsFund board member as of January. I joined during the 50th anniversary. Getting to know each of you in the coming weeks is going to be one of my key goals, but I'm eager today to help launch our first ever digital webinar. It's a Zoom webinar news event, and we'll be talking about a bunch of stuff related to all of the unprecedented COVID-19 situation and what ArtsFund is doing to help with that. But before we get into that, I've got some exciting stuff to reveal to you. I'm grateful to be among the leadership team as a response to the crisis and leads us forward in relief and recovery efforts for the arts community. So for the next hour, it's a time of pivots. As I said, this is ArtsFund's first ever live digital news event. Thanks for joining us. Sue Coliton, ArtsFund's interim CEO, will share new data about the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on the arts and cultural sector and announce ArtsFund's response. You'll also hear from three arts leaders, Bernie Griffin of the Fifth Avenue Theater, Wier Harman of Town Hall, and James Miles of Arts Corps, who will talk about the impacts on their specific organizations and the communities they serve. Anthony Miles, the ArtsFund board, will add his thoughts and introduce our incoming president and CEO, Greer, who has not yet officially started, but is with us today to be introduced to Seattle for the first time. Today's event is both a digital press conference and a community conversation. There's going to be an opportunity for Q&A at the end. So a couple quick housekeeping rules and points of information to get started. In the Zoom webinar feature, the attendee video and microphones are off. However, you can ask questions by submitting a question in the chat box. It's called Q&A for panelists, and we'll take those throughout. We'll respond to them at the tail end of the webinar. This is about an hour-long webinar. We will be done by 1 o'clock. This is being streamed on Zoom, and that's where you'll be able to answer questions, and it is on Facebook as well. Thanks for joining our first ever digital press conference and community conversation. It's time to get started. So we're honored to start off with a special performance from local theater artist Justin Huertas. Justin will perform an original song from Lydia and the Troll, a show commissioned by Seattle Rep, which was scheduled to open its world premiere next week and is one of all too many COVID canceled cultural events. Thank you, Justin, and it's all yours.
A woman who is free to roam across the divide, and maybe she's a singer who plays shows in the night and wakes up in a different city every day. Imagine a life, a woman whose only baggage is what is in sight. It's just a duffel filled with clothes and maybe a bite, whatever she might need until the next gig she plays. She'll stay, she'll sing, she'll go. She'll drive, get high, lay low, until another show. She'll see the sights and live her life, and she'll write. Imagine a life, a woman who's written and recorded an LP, like maybe with the grant that has been offered to me, with 10 songs and an album and a national tour. Imagine a life, not worrying about how I will pay off my loans. It is my destiny because I feel it in my bones. And every time I play, I know that I'm meant for more. I'll stay, I'll sing, I'll go. I'll live beyond control. I'll drive past what I know. Accumulate the stories I want to write, and then I'll write 100 songs for me to sing. I've got 100 songs at least, and something's blocking the way. The words are on a delay. Imagine this page with overflowing lyrics of my sadness and rage. The ballads of my trauma would crack open the cage, and pressure to deliver would not turn me to stone. But if I were alone, I'd have all the space in my head to face the unknown. I'd work it and interpret all my thoughts into tones, and melodies would constantly pour from me with ease, like the steadiest breeze, and all the voices would cease. It'd be as easy as breathing. 100 songs for me to sing. I've got 100 songs at least, but something's blocking the way. The words are on a delay. 100 songs that seem so clear, at least 100 that I hear. Is there a way to adapt, or am I trapped? Thank you. Thank you so much to ArtsFund, and thank you to everyone who's out there supporting the arts and artists right now. It's a crazy, crazy time, but just know that there are many, 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 many artists, myself included, waiting in the wings with 100 songs to sing to all of you. Thank you.
Justin, well done. Amazing stuff. I'm sorry that we had to cancel the show, and looking forward to seeing you once you go live when we come out of this. Thank you.
Thank you.
So now to share today's ArtsFund's news, I'm welcome Coliton, ArtsFund Interim CEO, who has been spearheading ArtsFund's response to the COVID-19 crisis.
Aaron, thank you, Justin, and thanks to all of you who are able to join us today. I'm here to share with you news about COVID-19 impacts on our region's cultural nonprofits and to talk about how ArtsFund is responding. As you know, this crisis has had devastating impacts throughout our community, dramatically affecting the work and life for each of us. While the mandated closures are essential for public health, they are having immediate and profound effects on our region's arts nonprofits, artists, and cultural workers. From early March, ArtsFund has been surveying the arts sector to better understand these impacts. Most recently, we collected data over a 2-week period in April from 90 organizations representing arts, culture, and scientific nonprofits. The survey respondents were primarily based in King County, and the results are staggering. The projected loss of revenue for fiscal year 2020 is estimated to be between $133 and $135 million. And a loss of revenue for arts organizations is not a loss of profit. It's a loss of funds to pay salaries, rent, and programming. On the workforce front, just under 5,000 employees have been furloughed or laid off. These full-time, part-time, and contractual workers include management, as well as musicians, actors, artists, set designers, production crews, and others. Regarding programming, 97% of our region's arts, cultural, and scientific nonprofits have had to cancel programs as a result of the crisis. On the positive side, many of these organizations are now transitioning to digital platforms. And as we all know, nonprofits depend on fundraisers for critical contributed revenue, and 76% of the organizations have had to cancel their fundraising events. These numbers underscore for us the critical need to provide near-term relief, to enable arts and culture nonprofits to maintain essential functions and retain core staff so they're able to reopen when possible. So what is ArtsFund doing about this? Since the early days of the crisis, we've dedicated our full staff to implementing a 3-part strategy. That strategy includes sharing information and resources, collecting data like I just shared, and galvanizing support. Today, we're announcing new grants from ArtsFund to arts and culture nonprofits totaling $4.8 million. This total includes both an early distribution of our annual operating grants as well as emergency relief payments from our COVID-19 Arts Emergency Relief Fund. This is not business as usual. In a typical year, ArtsFund makes grant decisions in late June, with grant totals based on outcomes of our annual fundraising campaign. Because of the pandemic, we expedited our annual process to meet the escalating need. We also established an Arts Emergency Relief Fund in collaboration with several of Seattle's anchor arts organizations to raise additional funds to address the impacts of the pandemic. So to give you a few details of these two sets of grants, ArtsFund's annual grant-making program, now in its 51st year, provides general operating grants that enable grant recipients to invest funds where needed most to advance their mission. These grants, totaling $2.2 million, are being awarded to 66 nonprofits in King and Pierce counties. An additional $2.6 million in emergency relief grants have been distributed to 80 King County cultural nonprofits. These grants provide short-term relief in the form of unrestricted funding to organizations which have been particularly hard hit during this public health emergency. ArtsFund is a nonprofit ourselves, and our ability to make these grants is thanks to the support of our donors and our advocates. We offer particular thanks to the ArtsFund Foundation, which seeded the relief fund with a $1 million investment and increased its annual distribution to support the early payment of our annual grants. And we offer a special welcome to the new donors to ArtsFund. Notably, 74% of donors to the relief fund are first-time donors to ArtsFund. And we thank you for supporting the arts in this time of need. Now I'm going to turn the program over to Sarah Sidman, ArtsFund's Vice President of Strategic Initiatives and Communications. Sarah.
Thank you, Sue, and thanks to all of you for joining us in today's event. You just heard the big numbers. Well over $130 million in lost revenue, nearly 5,000 jobs lost or furloughed, and programs canceled by 97% of cultural nonprofits, programs which bring vital economic and social impacts to the communities they serve. As Sue mentioned, ArtsFund collected this information from 90 arts, cultural, and scientific nonprofits in the central Puget Sound region. And while these groups are widespread in budget, art form, and geographic scope, the data points to a common theme. This pandemic is staggering and devastating to the cultural ecosystem in the central Puget Sound, and we have a long road to recovery. To share specific examples of the impacts to our cultural nonprofits and the people they serve, I am honored to be joined today by Bernie Griffin, Managing Director of the Fifth Avenue Theater, Wier Harman, Executive Director of Town Hall Seattle, and James Miles, Executive Director of Arts Corps. Thank you all for your time today and for all you're doing day in and day out. So let's just jump right into the conversation. Tell us about the impact of COVID-19 on your organizations and communities. Let's start with Bernie, and then we'll go to Wier and then James.
Thanks, Sarah, and thank you to you and to Sue and to the donors of ArtsFund. This support in these times is extraordinary to all of us. I'll talk specifically to the Fifth and then larger to the sector, if that's okay. At the Fifth, you know, we have revenue lost is between March and June is $7 million. We had to eliminate or furlough half of our staff, and the other half that are remaining are at reduced pay and hours to try and get us through this time, because I know I speak for the sector when I say the only thing we know how to manage right now is expenses, because we can't know how to forecast revenue. So as stewards of these organizations, we're just trying to maintain core staff so we can get us from here to there. And quite frankly, we don't know where there is yet, but that's okay. We'll get there. And you know, everyone, individuals, organizations, corporations, foundations, everyone is hurting now. And you know, for our sector, this is not a new phenomenon. As we know, the difference between a surplus and deficit is razor thin, and on a good year you might have a little in surplus, and in a bad year you have some in deficit. So, but we're in this together, and what I want to talk about just very briefly is we all know the needs and the impact of lost revenue and lost programs and unemployment. But what I want to talk about too is for the sector, what we give and what we're going to be here to do as far as the economic recovery plan. We understand how dependent we are all on each other to build and to strengthen the tapestry of our community. So as a representative of the largest musical theater company in the state of Washington, I want to try to just make the point that we talk about organizations and larger organizations, but organizations are people. We employ 800 people throughout the course of the year. That's admin, that's our union brothers and sisters, that is our front of house staff, that's everybody. This is a handcrafted art. It takes all of these people to make the magnificent work that we do at the Fifth Avenue Theater. And from that, we attract 300,000 people into our doors every year. And so that is, the Fifth Avenue generates $27 million to our economy. And that is split pretty much right down the middle between our patrons and the wages that we pay. So we pay out $14 million in wages. And then our patrons spend $13 million in our economy every year. So that's parking, that's retail, that's shopping, that is going out to restaurants. So we are all dependent on each other. And then to give a broader picture of the 21 arts, cultural, scientific, and heritage organizations, we employ more than 4,000 people. And our attendance is 8.7 million, which, by the way, get this, is more than the Seahawks, the Sounders, and the Mariners combined. And that's who comes through our doors. We are true regional organizations. And, you know, when the time is right, we will open our doors again. And as you know, you said, Sarah, we are going to do some more digital content, especially for our education outreach programs. Oh, and these 21 organizations that I just mentioned, we also serve 1 million kids and young people throughout the state of Washington. So when the time's right, we'll open our doors with probably some different protocols than you're used to. But let me say this too, that I believe communal gatherings to experience the magic of musical theater or ballet or the symphony is one that will not be substituted for digital content. It is a basic needs of humans to gather together to experience a collective outpouring for our souls. So we welcome, I know I speak for everyone when I say we all look forward to the day that we can welcome everybody back home. Thanks, Sarah.
Thank you, Bernie. We'll be hearing from you again in a minute. Let's transition over to Wier about the impact of COVID-19 on your organization and community.
I won't be nearly as eloquent as Bernie without notes or have facts at my command. And further, I just want to make sure everybody knows I only snuck out of my house into my office because there was no Wi-Fi on Queen Anne, top of Queen Anne this morning. So yeah, it was a super bummer. So at any rate, imagine in this time functioning without Wi-Fi. Who'd have thunk it? So like other organizations, I'll talk about our organizational impacts and then talk about our various constituencies and the impact of COVID on our extended community. So like other organizations, Town Hall has canceled a major fundraiser, lost a lot of sponsorships, already begun to dip into our cash reserves. Nearly 200 events at Town Hall have been or will be canceled or postponed due to COVID-19 before the end of this fiscal year, that's June 30th. Some of those are being rescheduled as live streams, but the resulting impact is a loss of just under $1 million in the fiscal year. We're lucky in that Town Hall was able to shift to digital programming quickly to sustain our community engagement, and what had been kind of a secondary capacity or a content platform is now a vital tool for us to sustain our mission of building community through ideas and creative expression. But the loss of ticket and rental income is real, and our great concern as an institution is the long-term impact on our reserve funds and the ways that it threatens our very operating model, which is built around heavy subsidies of ticket prices and rental rates for our nonprofit content partners. So COVID is cutting to the very core of our mission, which is to be accessible to the whole community, even as it opens up a new frontier of accessibility through digital access. The impact on our various constituencies is huge. We have an audience of about 110,000 people in a typical year, over 5,000 members. Most of our patrons, or I should say many of our patrons, are older or have fixed and modest incomes. Not only are we an important lifeline to cultural experiences for them, but a significant change in our operating model, even temporarily, risks leaving these members of our community out of the conversation at Town Hall and out of the cultural conversation generally. Beyond our audiences, our other key public constituency is our rental partners. Over 90 different nonprofits use Town Hall every year to make their case or express their creativity to the community. And with our building closed, we are working to develop a program of online services for them. But a lot of our organizations, children's choirs, schools, community orchestras, the logistics of presenting digitally for them are going to be extremely challenging. Of the 100+ rental cancellations we've already seen, many are from organizations that aren't even in the business of presenting events per se. They're small nonprofits or advocacy organizations who do one or two things in a typical year, and now they'll miss a complete cycle of engagement with their constituents. Some of you may also know that Town Hall hosts a lot of authors and speakers in politics, science, and literature. Their ability to travel to Seattle will be dramatically affected in the near term, and it will take a key piece of our public identity along with it. Finally, the impact on our staff, and especially our hourly event staff and our volunteers, is huge. Half of our team are event dependent, and there's no real analog for their work in a digital setting. And plus our 50+ volunteers are a crucial part of our community that's now totally estranged from that feeling of connection and community that they get through being with us. That's, I know, kind of a long catalog, but it starts to tell the story of the impact on Town Hall directly in our extended community.
Thank you, Wier. James?
Greetings. I'm James Miles, the Executive Director of ArtsCorps. We serve mostly Black and Brown, mostly low-income students in South Seattle and South King County. So with COVID and schools being closed, there goes all of our work. You know, we did a lot of in-person programming, working in the schools to support students in academia, after school, pre-professional training in the arts, and of course, youth development, training young people for college and careers. That's been, and then in addition to fundraising, as has been stated before, we had a major event in March that was totally canceled. We had to do it completely online. Luckily, we were able to raise a good amount of money from that event, nowhere near our goal, but still, you know, not too shabby. I'm really appreciative of our community. So navigating not being able to reach students has been quite an issue. We've had to create online lesson plans, online digital videos and educational resources, coloring books, lesson plans, curricula, the whole nine. But I think the biggest thing that we came up against is that quite a few of our youth don't have access to Wi-Fi, as Wier mentioned. So we had to create physical art kits dropped off at sites where schools are providing free lunch and other sites as a way to say, like, hey, we know you don't have Wi-Fi or any way to engage with the arts. Here's a physical packet with some pastels, some markers, some paint, and some paper for you to take home with instructions. That's been very successful. We actually have more and more sites are reaching out to us about doing that. But it's tough because we don't know what young people are doing. As a parent, my own children in homeschool, like I'll just say the word homeschool and leave it there. It's been quite the uphill battle. And I'm seeing an increase in the need for social emotional learning, more need for young people to understand the context of where they are, how they're going to get through it, and how this being quarantined inside their house is related to academia, what that means for them. Why does school even need to exist anymore? What are we doing? And the arts have always been a way for a platform for students to understand the world around them and to express their thoughts and dreams and beliefs. Taking that away, you're seeing a lot of young people, especially those on the margins, Black, Brown, LGBT, immigrant populations, really floundering. And that's been the hardest part to try to navigate and try to deal with.
So this question is for all three of you. What has been helping you sustain? What kind of help is useful during this time? Let's start with you, Wier, and then we'll go to James and Bernie.
So we just concluded a major capital campaign to renovate our building, and coming back into the building after 2 years sort of itinerant, we built, frankly, a killer team finally. And because we want to be able to restart immediately, our guiding principle in the near term has been not to break up the band, to keep this team intact for as long as we possibly can, in the hope that we'll be able to restart. I should note that our spaces are on the smaller side, so As we begin to ramp back up into production generally, or I should say as it's allowed by the governor, we expect to be able to produce in some form relatively quickly. So keeping the band together has been really important for us. So honestly, the biggest expense line for us and most important support has been around payroll expenses. We're among the fortunate recipients of a PPP loan from the government, and we've calculated how to spend it, frankly, kind of down to the penny. And I don't want to seem too, you know what, kissy, but frankly, ArtsFund's emergency, I should say the unrestricted support in a general arts fund year and in this sort of COVID arts emergency response, along with accelerating that yearly grant process, was a huge lifeline for us, a major lifeline for us that pulled us through a couple of weeks, frankly. So to survive right now, we're pursuing most available means. We're committed for the time being to offering our live stream content for free, but we're also working to increase event-driven donations through those platforms. On the contributed revenue front, we're pulling out all the stops. Give Big is tomorrow, no surprise there, to our own fundraising campaigns, the SBA program I mentioned before, a handful of other special relief grants, and of course, special appeals to our close-in donors. I should say that in the end, the support that will be most meaningful to us, I think, is a simple continuation of our longstanding relationships. Town Hall has most of the philanthropic infrastructure we need to survive into the future. And if the folks who've gotten us this far sustain their levels of commitment or even temporarily, modestly increase them, which I know, given the current financial outlook, might seem a preposterous ask, but the reality is it won't take much for us to continue across to the other side as we work to figure out how to monetize on the earn side in parallel. So we're also going to be encouraging, if we can sustain that community of our current support, we'll also be inviting people into simple membership relationships with us. It's a great way to sort of start for the first time. And it's kind of analogous to public radio support, since Town Hall is a collective community asset where broad participation makes the asset possible for everybody. So circling back to the capital campaign for a second, beyond the enormous bummer of not being able to host people in our beautiful new home, I'm not saying it's beautiful, that's what people are telling me. But anyway, I've got to be honest,
Beautiful.
Thank you. It's pretty exhausting for our fundraising team to step back into that kind of crisis fundraising mode that frankly drove the organization for 5 years. We're doing what it takes to save the place, but we'd frankly all rather be focusing on what beer to sell in our new auto bar or how to program our new gallery. So we're gonna do what it takes to survive right now. But I think focusing, like, if everyone can imagine sustaining the commitments that they've already made through this time and the community that's been established around each of our cultural organizations, that's the sort of strongest foundation to allowing us to get through. And we will figure out how to try to compensate. So for some organizations, it's a marginal difference. Other organizations, I know that the earn side is a profound loss to be able to account for. And I'll let some of those people speak in just a little bit. At any rate.
Yeah. And James, we're going to go to you and then Bernie. And I hate to say this, but we are running really tight on time. So the question is really, what kind of help is useful to you right now, and what's helping you sustain? And then we're going to segue back into the ArtsFund leadership conversation.
Lovely. Echoing everything Wier just said, you know, what's helping us sustain mentally and emotionally is our teaching artist staff, all of whom have worked in the schools. Some of them are still working, creating online content, but everyone is being paid a portion of what they would make normally. And that's been really sustainable because as Bernie said, it's about individuals and not organizations. So we're trying to take care of the individuals that work at ArtScore on a sustainability, in a sustainable way to keep them working, to keep young people engaged, learning, and with a platform for expression. In terms of sustainability for an organization, funding like ArtsFund has been, wildly helpful just to keep us running, allowing some funders, allowing us to switch from programmatic expenses to general operating for payroll, for, we have to, everyone has to have a computer now and a camera to broadcast their videos from home. That pivot has been really supportive and really helpful for us as an organization and the people, the community. That helps us sustain the love that we all have for the arts, for education, for live theater, for live conversations. Our community is what's going to keep us alive more so than anything else.
Yeah, ditto to my esteemed colleagues. General Operating Support Arts Fund is one of the last major funders who historically and currently provide general unrestricted operating support. And it's about paying our folks. And so that these amazing artists and artisans and musicians and performers can make their home here. And this is why this ecosystem, whether, you know, of the entities that are represented here or that we're representatives of, we are all interconnected. And it is by that interconnectedness that we make our community what it is. And it's a very special place. And the arts and culture will get us through to when we can see each other again in person.
Thank you. So thank you, James, Wier, and Bernie. Hopefully we will hear from you again during the open Q&A portion of this conversation. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce ArtsFund's board chair, Anthony R. Miles, who, along with our phenomenal board of trustees, has been instrumental in shaping and supporting ArtsFund's response. Tony?
Who can see me? I am not in. Thank you, Sarah. For those of you who can see me, I'm not entirely sure. We're having a little bit of trouble with my camera, but I want to recognize the eloquence of our panelists. I really always appreciate the insight that they provide into the arts world in general. And one of the best things about being involved with ArtsFund at this juncture is the outstanding quality of our staff. So on behalf of the Board of Trustees, I want to acknowledge with gratitude the incredibly hard work that our staff has been doing to provide resources and guidance in this unprecedented time, to launch the Relief Fund, and to push our annual grants out 2 months early. They've done this all in just a few short weeks, and we are tremendously grateful and proud for that work. It's exceedingly gratifying to chair ArtsFund's board at a time when our staff, trustees, and foundation board have so amply exhibited the civic-mindedness and initiative that characterized ArtsFund's founders. Fundamentally, ArtsFund's purpose is to foster the health of the arts community and amplify the contributions the arts make to the health of the greater Puget Sound community. The resources and investments we've made available to help the sector weather the crisis, along with our ongoing work to support arts organizations in recovery, reflects our commitment in this 50th anniversary year to a future for the arts. The value of a private nonprofit funding, advocacy, and capacity building organization committed to the future well-being of the entire ecosystem has never been more clear. As we have over the past 50 years, ArtsFund will continue to evolve, pivot, and respond as necessary to help meet the needs of the sector and preserve access to arts and culture for the community at large. Over the course of my tenure, we've been thinking a lot about ArtsFund's future. As many of you know, we've also been looking for our next leader. While responding to this crisis has delayed our planning, we were able to conclude our CEO search and recently announced the appointment of Michael Greer as ArtsFund's next president and CEO. I'm delighted to have this opportunity to introduce Michael to the regional arts community. Currently, Michael is the executive director of the Oregon Ballet Theater, the largest dance organization in Oregon. A former professional ballet dancer, Michael has held leadership and managerial positions in both private industry and the nonprofit arts sector. His experience includes leading cross-cultural teams in financial services and manufacturing enterprises, and working in both India and China. Michael took our search committee by storm. With his energy and deep understanding of the roles organizations of all sizes can play in a thriving ecosystem. We were particularly struck by his commitment to access and equity with respect to both audiences and artists, his fresh ideas for engaging new audiences and donors, and a thoughtful approach to fostering collaboration both meet the challenges and make the most of the opportunities facing the sector at this time. We could not be more excited that Michael is joining us at this critical time. Please join me in welcoming Michael.
Thank you, Tony. I really appreciate that intro, and thank you to all of the panelists on here, and a special thank you to Justin for that amazing performance. Look forward to hearing more. Hello to everyone out there, and thank you for being a part of this event today. I am really honored to be a part of the Arts Fund mission to strengthen our community by supporting the arts through leadership, advocacy, and grant making, especially during these unprecedented times. Now, I think more than ever, that symbiotic relationship between all of our communities, arts and cultural groups could not be more important. As Sue just shared with us, our individual artists, our culturally specific organizations, and our largest anchor organizations have all been dramatically impacted by this crisis. And I think that it is also important to remember that together, we are going to be the foundation of this recovery. Our sector will recover. And when it does, ArtsFund will be here to amplify those voices and further strengthen the foundation of arts and culture that so much of this community rests upon. And I am new to this organization. I'm learning things every day, but something that really inspired me the other day was that 74% of our donors to the Relief Fund are first-time contributors to ArtsFund. 74%. To me, that confirms the idea that arts and culture is as relevant and essential to our communities today as it has ever been. And I want to personally reach out and thank all of our supporters, new and returning, for their commitment to the sector. It is because of all of you that we will weather this storm, and we're going to emerge on the other side of this stronger. I am excited to begin my tenure as president and CEO of ArtsFund together with our amazing board of trustees, our staff, our volunteers, and all of the artists in this region. I really look forward to taking ArtsFund into the next half century of being a leader in our arts and culture community. Thank you all for giving me that opportunity. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Aaron for some Q&A. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Appreciate you, Tony. Thanks for all you've done for the organization. Michael, I can't imagine what it's like to step into the role, but getting to know you just in the past week since the announcement, I'm excited for your potential in our region. You know the Northwest, and I think as a leader that we need in the future, I think the organization has found the right one. So congratulations, good luck to you, and I look forward to helping you get into the community.
I appreciate that.
All right, so some questions that have come up. Remember, there's a Q&A box down below. The chat features another way you can go ahead and send questions in. We'll take a look at those and try to get to as many as we can. We're going to end here at shortly, but definitely before 1 o'clock. We are live on Facebook. Questions are submitted on Zoom. However, if you put comments on Facebook, there's a chance we could try to get to those, as we do have someone monitoring that as well. And so first question is for Sue Coliton. You are the interim president and CEO of the organization. Let's get your online here. First question is for what's next for ArtsFund in the immediate future as you guys deal with everything and the uncertainty?
Sure. Right now, we're planning for a second round of relief grants. We hope to be paying those out sometime in June. We'll continue to raise money for our Arts Emergency Relief Fund. We're beginning to put in place a plan for recovery. That includes restarting our capacity building and advocacy work, as well as working on a recovery plan for the sector. And of course, most importantly, we're getting ready for a leadership transition and to welcome Michael into the role.
So speaking of that, got a question me there for a second to get some audio echo there. So Michael, just it's just an incredible time to be making a move like this and stepping into the role. Why now? And what about Seattle and this environment has attracted you to the position?
Sure, Aaron. It's a great question, right? A really relevant question, I think, for where we are today. But I was looking for an opportunity that would allow me to have a broader impact across the arts and culture sector, and ArtsFund was an obvious choice. And I think the timing, there's never been a greater need for that impact than today. ArtsFund has, in my opinion, ArtsFund has the capacity to play not only a pivotal role in the recovery of this sector, but also in the recovery of the community as a whole. And I just really wanted to be a part of that. And I think you asked why Seattle. I would say why not Seattle. It's a fantastic community. It's a fantastic city. The Pacific Northwest is an amazing place. And really, more specifically, I think that this region is at kind of the forefront of the next generation of global leadership. The industries that are represented here have what I think is kind of an amplified voice on the world stage, and they're going to be really instrumental towards shaping our future. And I want to make sure that arts and culture are a part of that voice. The institutions that ArtsFund supports, they represent a diverse, inclusive, and really world-class cross-section of what the community has to offer. And I'm really looking forward to being a part of supporting those institutions as they share those values. So.
Thank you, Michael. Got a couple questions coming on in here from the community. To Sarah in particular, where can people find the listing of which organization and the amounts that they receive for the relief funds specifically?
Unmute myself, technical challenges, sorry about that. For all, we on the ArtsFund website will be providing the press release, the data that we have shared earlier in the conversation. We have a downloadable one-pager there, as well as the list of all the donors to the relief fund and the organizations which receive those grants. There are a number of different places on our site that you will find them. So we'll be sending all of the Zoom registrants, the actual links, but if you go to the ArtsFund webpage and our COVID relief fund, there's a tab off to the far right that hits some of the COVID relief fund information. That page will have links to the data, to the grantees, and to the funders. And for the organizations who receive the $2.2 million in ArtsFund's annual grants, those are on artsfund.org/grant recipients. So we'll be following up on Facebook with a number of those links as well.
Okay.
Thank you for the question.
Bernie, and where, perhaps James, question around your organizations and when the governor lifts these stages, and that where do you all fit into it, and how are you planning to open up, and what does that look like, or are you still in that we're not sure phase yet?
Well, what we do know for our organization, we are a 2,000 seat theater. And we know that we are in phase 4, for sure, of the 4 phases that the governor talked about on Friday. We don't know what that's going to look like. We don't know at what point does the mandate of, more than 250 people gathering come in at that phase 4 point. So the answer is we don't know. And, the buzzwords are nimble and pivot. And so we are all, I know I speak for everybody when we say we are working on about 4 or 5 different plans as far as an optimistic plan ranging to a pretty draconian plan as far as what that might mean and how we get from here to there and get to the other side of this and do what we all do. First things first, just to give an update at the 5th, we have Sister Act, which is in our theater, and we have lights hanging that shouldn't be hanging, and they've been there since March. So we need to get and we've got a task force internally working on how do we get our employees back, and then what are the protocols for getting our audiences back. And to be clear, no one is doing this in a silo. We are doing this as a consortium so that folks will have the same experience if you go to Benaroya, if you go to the 5th, if you go to the Paramount, if you go to Macaw. And so we are hand in glove in establishing those plans individually and then collectively.
I'll just to keep it brief. Our spaces are dramatically smaller, and at the same time, we likely will be reopening maybe slightly earlier, depending on how the stages go, than the Fifth and the other larger institutions will go. We feel it's important to try to sort of work on two tracks simultaneously. We cannot imagine discontinuing the digital delivery in the near future, because so many people we can't account for audience behavior, and we assume that many people will not feel comfortable or safe entering spaces, no matter the precautions that we take, knowing that, to Bernie's point, every institution will take the most rigorous and thorough approach to hygiene and distancing that we all possibly can, and will work within those constraints. But we feel that it's important to get back up and running as soon as we can, simply because, town hall and the cultural community generally is where Seattle figures out what kind of community it wants to be. And so many people as individuals are reporting remarkable epiphanies, new clarity about priorities that are revealed by their experience during COVID. And so we believe that after the shock of this disorienting and atomized time, cultural organizations will be more crucial to welcoming us all back into community than ever before. And that Seattle wasn't Seattle without cultural organizations, and we won't become the next Seattle without cultural organizations stepping back into the lead early. So that's why we're kind of chomping at the bit.
Yeah, I would say, pardon me, because we're based in the school, we're a bit different. And as schools are out for the rest of the school year, ending June 19th, and more than likely will not be returning in the fall, they're preparing for high school students to work remotely for the rest of the school year, 2020-21. Elementary K through 6 will have intermittent classes, smaller groups. So working with schools that have 15 students versus 30, 20 teachers versus 50, how we fit into the school system is still up in the air. So we're planning, like Wier said, to do a lot of digital engagement with young people, continuing to drop off arts kits for those that do not have access to art or Wi-Fi or technology, and just pivot. I mean, we're basically doing this whole pivot like everyone else, and just like, how do we reach these young people? How do we keep them engaged? How do we use our efforts as artists, as educators, to even attempt to close the ever-growing achievement gap? That'll be our focus, and it may look like a different arts core in the future, but our mission will stay the same, and that's revolutionizing education.
Yeah. Amazing stuff that you guys are doing in crazy times that we're in, and every sector, including arts, is really impacted. It's a sector that we really need to be focused on. I got a question here from the public again. Question for Bernie particularly. How do you see the performing arts being reinvented at this time due to restrictions on audience gatherings?
Well, boy, that's the $1 million question, isn't it? I go back to, I mean, I think it's again the question of how do we get from here to there? How do we continue to stay engaged with our community when we can't welcome people into our facility? And there's online content. I think, as I said at the beginning, our education outreach programs have really expanded. One of our marquee programs, the Rising Star Project, is holding weekly gatherings to get ready for 10-minute musicals and all of that kind of stuff. However, I believe that there won't be a substitute for communal gathering for live performances. And we'll get back there, but what we know for sure is an organization like the Fifth will be one of the last things coming back online. And this sector, whether it's James's or Wier's, it will be the hardest hit. Other folks will come back online, and we will support people as we all come back online. But to be clear, this is going to be a long time. And so we are going to, everyone needs our support. We need to make sure that people have health coverage. We need to make sure that people have have enough food. We need to make sure everybody is taken care of. But what I suggest to everyone here who's listening in is to don't forget this sector, because we're going to need you. We need you now, and we're going to need you later, so we can get back to what we do, and that is coming together to tell stories of who we are as human beings.
There's a question innovation around, Seattle responding in comparison to the rest of the world. I know in the restaurant industry, just yesterday, this last week, there was a viral post around, I think in Amsterdam, there's restaurants that are opening with greenhouse huts where people can have dates along the water in the greenhouse guts to keep social distancing together. And that seems to be a trend that I think will hit the rest of the world here soon, and we're seeing that. Are there any things in arts that you're seeing around the world that might come to play here other than Zoom webinars and music sessions online and karaoke, Facebook groups? What do you think are some of the innovative things that might be applicable here that we might see soon as trends coming up? Anyone have any innovations that they're seeing?
I would say that for the education realm, the doors kind of opened up. So more and more resources are available to those that do have access to technology. There's also an opportunity for more and more collaboration between organizations, regardless of location. We're working with the International Teaching Artists Consortium. They're based in the next convening is in South Korea, or was to be in South Korea in September. But so we're working with all these organizations and teaching artists on how we can convene from far apart. And I think that's you'll see a lot more cross collaboration across sectors, within sectors, through multiple localities.
Ditto. I agree, James.
And I'll just say really quickly that we expect, so there are actually advantages from a production perspective to the digital work that we've been doing, and we expect to continue it in parallel for a while because it offers access advantages and because it allows us actually to invite people in from across the world into conversations with Seattle artists and speakers that wouldn't be possible otherwise. But I also want to just triple down on Bernie's point that there will never be a substitute for bringing people together in physical space. And while we will continue to pursue that as a new, we call it a digital stage for the organization, there will be a time when I hope people will make that active choice to come back together in space, and that the fidelity of that experience and your ability to be moved by that collective energy is so much greater than anything that we've been able to produce in the digital setting. So I just want to, put in a plug for old school analog right here.
I think Erin may be tossing back to me. Is that right, Erin? Hi. Sue, we would love to circle back to you for 1 minute with a final question that we're being asked across all the platforms, which is essentially, what can people do? How can we all take action right now? What can we do?
Sure. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you.
Okay.
Hopefully soon we'll see you.
I think I'm here we go. Okay. Right. What can we do? We can support the arts sector. Most importantly, give to the local nonprofits directly. Go on their websites. They are introducing their seasons. They're selling memberships. They're selling subscriptions. Give direct contributions. Purchase tickets for 2021. Tomorrow is Give Big, which is a community day of philanthropy, and many organizations are able to offer matching grants. So participate in Give Big. If you can support the entire sector instead of just an organization, join us. artsfund.org/donate or artsfund.org/COVID relief to join us through our annual campaign, through our COVID relief campaign. We're doing additional payouts this year. Support this community because they're going to be supporting us as we get through recovery.
Thank you. Thank you, Sue, for your leadership during this pivotal time for the arts community. Tony mentioned to Michael, what a crazy time to be taking on a new role. And honestly, what a crazy time to be serving as our interim. And we in the sector are forever in your debt for doing so. Thank you for your leadership. Thank you also to Tony and to Michael for joining us today and for your leadership moving us forward. Thank you to Aaron for pushing us into the 21st century and enabling us to host our first ever digital news event. Thank you to Bernie, James, and Wier for joining us today and for all you do. Thank you to all our regions, cultural organizations, the staffs, the artists, everything that you're doing to help keep our communities connected during this time of isolation and to help us as we build forward towards recovery and togetherness moving forward, where you just said it so beautifully. Thank you for how you phrased that. Thank you to Justin for sharing a piece from your musical, Lydia and the Troll. For those of you who are watching us on Facebook and who did not get to hear that piece, we will be figuring out a way to record it and share it with you. Today's webinar has been recorded, so we will make that available. We will also share out all the links to all the resources we've talked about. Thank you all for being here today. Thank you for believing in the arts. Thank you for investing in the arts. We are all in this together and we will all get out of this together. We look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you.